I promised to tell you the funny story of how I met my husband, and it's quite a crazy thing, really. Let me just backtrack and tell you that this week I'll be 39, but this happened when I was 20. So it was almost half my life ago. You know, I was young and naive and whatever. Anyway, as most of you know, I got into a near fatal car accident and suffered a severe head trauma. And so, of course, you know, I was in the hospital for weeks, and I came out, you know, and had to go home to recover and was in terrible shape. I was actually paralyzed, was deaf in one ear and partially deaf in the other. I've had a miraculous recovery, but suffice it to say, as a single mom at that age, I lost my 3 jobs. Yes, I was working 3 jobs. I lost my 3 jobs, of course. I lost my apartment, I lost my car. I pretty much lost everything. And of course, I was a single mom, as I said, so I was in pretty bad shape. And this girl that I had worked with, I didn't really know her that well. We weren't friends. We just knew each other through association at one of my jobs. And her name was Carla. And anyway, so Carla said to me, I have a laundry room that you can stay in. She said, I know it's not much, but it's all I have. And I was so appreciative. I mean, you cannot even imagine how appreciative I was at this point. It was a nice size laundry room, and she didn't have a washer and dryer, and it was just wide enough to stick a day bed in there, barely. And so I lived in her laundry room. Of course, my son, who was 2 at the time, stayed in her boys' room. She had 2 boys as well. She was a single mom too. And it was just, you know, the nicest thing ever. And we became friends. I stayed with her for several months. Got back on my feet, you know, went to my doctor's appointments. Ultimately, you know, was able to work again and things like that. But, you know, I don't know what I would have done without her, really. And anyway, Carla was an interesting sort. Let me tell you, she was, she'd had a hard time. You know, she was single mom as well with 2 boys, and she'd had a really hard time as well. But when she did smile, she lit up the whole room. I mean, her eyes would smile. I'm sure you know people like that, you know, that just can light up an entire room. And she really was one of those types of people. Interesting, you know, thing about her is she was adopted, and I think about the time that she was a teenager, which was maybe, you know, 10 years before I met her, she came to the conclusion that Ted Nugent was her father. And this, her biological father, of course, and because she was adopted. And this all came about because of the lyrics, you know, and so she would, you know, she would play the songs, you know, we'd be in the house in the evening and hanging out and stuff, and she'd, you know, be, you know, playing the songs, and she'd see, he's singing about me. And so she had, you know, gone through all of his lyrics, looked at all of his albums, and she'd come to the conclusion that he was searching for her, that he knew about her, and that he was, in fact, her father. So it was interesting, you know, and it was great. It was fun, you know. I mean, it was, you know, girl time. We're laughing, we're cutting up, whatever, after the boys went to bed. And, you know, I really kind of enjoyed her persona. And one time we were sitting around talking, just, you know, having a chat or whatever, girl talk, you know, and she said, you know, between the 2 of us, we've probably dated every eligible man within our age range in this small honky-tonk town. Which, you know, we hadn't dated that many people, but it really is a super small town. And eligibility, you know, there are a lot of qualifiers there as far as what would be considered eligible for us. So anyway, you know, have a job, I don't know. Anyway, so we, you know, she was just saying, you know, what we should do is we should just go to California, like just ditch everything, go to California, and we should find these men with long hair, blue eyes, and an earring that play guitar and marry them and live happily ever after. I'm reminding you here that I was 20. And we'd both, you know, really been heartbroken. We both had a really hard time. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds good, whatever. And I mean, I don't know how's that ever going to happen, right? You know, we're just talking. Anyway, she gets kind of serious on this plan. Like, really serious. So the next thing I know, she's getting it really planned out, you know, to the point of, here's what we're going to do. We're going to work 3 jobs each. We're going to sell everything we own, and then we're going to take what money we do have and whatever we can fit in the trunk of her car, because of course I had lost my car, you know, after the car accident. Anyway, it got repoed because I didn't have any jobs. So anyway, you know, what we could just take in the trunk of her car. So we're going to sell everything else. We're going to work 3 jobs. She has this date set for when we're going to leave. Our boys went to their dad's for the summer, so that was going to be our leave date. And then the plan gets like a little bit heavier and heavier, you know. Anyway, so then she decides, you know what we'll do is we'll ditch the car, like in Utah or something, and we'll burn it up with our stuff inside of it. And I don't know how we're going to get to California from there, but at any rate, so she's, you know, so we'll just lose our identities and change our names and start over, like totally start fresh in our life. And, you know, at this point, I'm kind of getting the clue that, like, she's serious. And I'm thinking there's, you know, obviously there's no way that I can, you know, go to the other side of the country and leave my child and not come back, you know, or change my identity or whatever. Not that I had much of an identity at that point in my life outside of being Zach's mother, which was kind of huge to me. So anyway, I thought about it, you know, and I could see that she was really distressed. I mean, she was getting, you know, I was borderline depressed, I'm sure, you know, I was right there with her. Anyway, I decided I'd go with her on the trip, but that I would come back. I thought, I'll go with her on this trip, and she'll find that man with long hair and blue eyes and an earring that plays guitar, and she'll live happily ever after, and I'll be home by the end of the summer, right? So I decided I'm going to go along with it. So I'm working 3 jobs. I was breakfast cook in the morning, I car hopped at Sonic in the afternoon, and I was the head waitress at a sports bar in the evening. That 3rd job was not my favorite, not my cup of tea really. Anyway, but I did it, and we saved up our money, and we had a yard sale, and we sold everything that we owned, which wasn't a whole lot, but you know, we were getting it together. So anyway, yeah, I know this is all nuts, but hey, I mean, what are you going to do when you have a friend who, when you have absolutely nothing and nowhere to go, lets you live in her laundry room, right? I mean, what else are you going to do? Go along with the plan, help the girl out, right? And she'd become a really good friend, you know, and I really cared about her, and you know, I thought all the best for her, right? So it's 2 weeks before leave date, and I think the night before this, we'd gone to a psychic. I mean, she's like all over this plan, right? So we go to this crazy psychic right outside of town, and you gotta understand we live like in the middle of nowhere anyway, so just imagine. But so we go to this psychic. Well, I go in first. So the lady calls me back, and she's Indian, I believe, you know, and she calls me back into this little room, and she sits me down, and she's, you know, it's all like a little eerie or whatever, but she says to me, "You're going on a journey, and you'll never reach your destination." And I don't know what else she said. That's only the really thing that, you know, that stuck in my mind. And I'm thinking to myself, well, of course not, because Carla's car is never going to make it all the way across the country anyway. I doubt we're even going to make it to Utah in that car. So, you know, whatever. But I'm thinking, who knows? It'll be an adventure, right? So the very next night was 2 weeks before our leave date. We had everything scheduled and planned. We'd already sold everything we owned. You know, it was getting down to the wire. 2 weeks to go. And I was working my 3rd job. I was the head waitress at the sports bar, so I was at the bar, actually, you know, cleaning and putting away, I don't know, cups, wine glasses, whatever. And this man walks in the door. This place is busy. I mean, all kinds of people walk in the door, but this particular man walks in the door, and he has long hair, blue eyes, and an earring. And he walks directly up to me. I mean, of all the people working there, he walks directly up to me, and he says to me, "Do you know any local bands in town, because I'm looking to trade my keyboard for a guitar?" And I was just speechless there for a second. I mean, I was kind of floored. I was like, you know, excuse me, but in 2 weeks I'm about to go to California to meet you. So I said, I do know a couple of local bands. And I said, if you'll give me your number, I'll get in touch with them. If anybody has anything, I'll, you know, tell them to call you. And that was that, you know. He drank 1 beer, I think, and he kind of swaggered to the men's room, and then he left. And I kind of thought, that's a nice sign. God can hardly hold 1 beer. Anyway, the next day, you know, I gave him a call or whatever and said, you know, I'd had no luck and made some calls around and had no luck and just wanted to let him know. And he invited me to have coffee, and we went and had a coffee. And on our 2nd date, he proposed to me. On our 3rd date, we moved in together, and within 90 days, we were married. And that's how I met my husband. That's Anne Marie's father. The sad part of that is I left my friend hanging. You know, I left Carla hanging. And here we were just 2 weeks before leave date, and I bail on her. And she ended up in the psych ward. I think just kind of, you know, lost it. And I was, you know, I was part of her escape plan or whatever, and that's always bothered me. But I mean, what else can you do? I mean, when you've got like months working up to this big plan to go meet a guy with long hair, blue eyes, and an earring that played guitar, which was her idea, by the way. That's not necessarily was my image of a guy or whatever. What am I supposed to do when he just like walks right in, walks right up to me and gives me his number? Marry him, of course. Very odd. Very odd. Obviously that didn't last. We have been divorced 12 years this month, actually, and but we were married for 6 years, and I was very much in love with him, and it was all good and fine. It's just one of those things, you know, and it goes back to we were having a conversation in the last video about fate versus free will, and at that point in my life, you know, at 20 years old, fate was kind of one of those things, you know, that, like I said in the video before, we all just kind of grow up believing in that, you know, things happen for a reason or whatever. I'm over that now, and I really believe you have to make things happen, and it's all about choices and free will, which is great. But at that point in my life, you know, how could you deny that? Right? So, anyway, yeah, meant to be was the kind of thing, but it was very odd. Very strange. Coincidence or fate? Who knows? But at any rate, yeah, Carla, I still think about her to this day.